Good morning and welcome to the March 3rd, 2023 Weston High School PTO monthly meeting. Thanks everybody for zooming in and to all our participants here who joined in as well in person. We're going to jump right into our presenters today. We have a great lineup. We've got MaryFaith Blank, Dana Errichetti, Brian Passarelli, all presenting on DBT, and they've got about an hour's window, so we're going to transfer straight over to them and welcome them. Thank you very much for both coming. Shortly after that, we'll also have Dan Divito, the Director of Learning and Technology, joining us to update us on the new website that the district has rolled out, as well as an upcoming event, about families in the digital age and navigating all the pitfalls as families. So now I'll hand over to our guest speakers. Thank you again very much for coming out today. We're really happy you could join us and take the time for us.
Okay, so my name is Ryan Passarelli. I'm the school psychologist here, and I'm going to start us off. And the way I'm going to start out today is just by asking some questions, and then we'll dive into the other pieces of the presentation. So the first questions are, what are you guys observing in your teens? What do you think they're struggling with? Some of the behaviors you're seeing, or any frustrations that you have that in trying to help them, or that you're seeing. So kind of like, what is it? What are some of the thoughts about what you're seeing as far as your kids at home? Anything at all?
So do you guys work with the SPED classrooms? Because I'm not sure if you guys do or not, but my son, I've been talking to him and he has kind of not really spoken about meeting you guys or working with you.
Well, I'm a school psychologist, so I work with different students for counseling, and then I also do assessments as well, like a psychological evaluation. So that would be one way. I'm not necessarily, Dana as well, we're not necessarily in the classrooms, but we consult with the special education teachers, other teachers, and overall just on kind of the support that they receive.
Okay.
So, yeah, the child has like an emotional challenge and they have an IEP, and they're getting counseling or social skill support through that in a group or individually. More often than not, it's one of us. Sometimes it's the counselor.
Okay. All right. Thanks for answering.
Yeah. So you might, obviously you might be seeing in high school some stress, social stress, academic stressors, obviously some irritability at times. And I think that a lot of times too, with the ups and downs, there's this, you're developing skills, you're developing coping skills to manage some of the challenges that you're having. So, it's kind of like there's a lot going on. There's a lot to compare yourself to. There's a lot of ambitions, and at the same time, you're developing those skills to manage those challenges. So it's kind of like, you're also, if you look at academics, if you're looking at like study skills and executive functioning skills like task initiation, organization and planning, those skills are taxed more and more as you get older, and you're also you're in the process of learning and developing those skills. So that's the same thing with emotions. You're learning how to regulate better. You're learning how to adjust appropriately and manage your expectations and your challenges.
Yes. Just here. Actually, I think I'm gonna just give me a second.
Sure.
I'm gonna do it through Zoom and just share the screen to this. Slideshow. Let me just ask one question.
Sure.
Does everybody that's online, can they see the little square where Ryan and Dana are in addition to the presentation? Just so
Yeah.
somebody-
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, go ahead. One more. Thank you. All right, so this, so we're, I'm gonna kind of start to take you through the research process behind what DBT is, and then we're gonna kind of get into, a little bit more, how it's used, what it looks like in schools, and then, later on the strategies involved. So this is just an example of kind of like a situation that could occur and kind of like the problem that we're looking to solve and support kids with. But like the cue is like a problem or something happens. And then there's an emotional response that is challenging. And there's kind of the different directions that you can go in. And these are some large behaviors and challenges, but even that they can be large or small. What we're trying to do is teach them not necessarily to avoid or escape or re-engage in maladaptive coping strategies. We're looking to help them chronically find temporary relief in order to get them through those situations. So that would be like, doing poorly on an assessment, being sad or frustrated, instead of taking a really negative approach or like a habitual, approaches to solving that they would have a healthy habit of coping and kind of learning how to regulate and learning how to experience ups and downs, being comfortable, finding comfort in a way and experiencing emotions in a moment and then being able to react to those emotions. So it's really about chronic, temporary relief. What can I do in this moment to kind of help me through this situation? Because oftentimes it's, when you look back, you recognize that my initial reaction may be larger than the actual problem itself and sort of how I have resolutions for that.
And one thing I'll just add is we see a lot of students who, right, like no one wants this intolerable aversive emotion state, right? No one wants that. And so a lot of us have an urge or a tendency to escape or avoid. And what that's doing is really creating that temporary relief where, okay, yeah, we're not feeling really stressed in the moment because we've now avoided the situation completely. Or maybe it was a conflict with a friend and we were screaming, yelling, and now we've damaged that relationship. Instead, using our skills, maybe our interpersonal skills, to actually create not just temporary relief, but the long-lasting relief, where we now have better relationships, we feel more competent, we feel more capable. So when we inevitably get here, instead of just finding that route of escaping and avoiding through these challenging behaviors, really bringing in those skills to have not just temporary relief, but also long lasting. So DBT is kind of looking at solving this problem, and we'll get a little bit more into it.
All right, so here are some of the, the stats around it. So students in high achieving schools are an at-risk population, excessive need to achieve, some family stress, and just more access to different things. So, so obviously there are benefits, and then also there are other stressors that sometimes can be overlooked. And then there's just information here about, kind of that research that supports the need for this type of behavioral emotional intervention. The rise in suicides and attempted suicide, and just, this is the kind of the, obviously the most intensive challenge, but, then there's everything in between, and all of the challenges that kids can be going through now. And the factors being the higher levels of anxiety. I think the idea of like I think there's a lot of discipline needed in terms of managing kind of their lifestyle. So, how do I self-manage how much time I use technology, or I'm on my phone and passively doing things? How do I manage everything that's going on? Because there's so many opportunities for kids than ever before. So it's great in many ways, and it's challenging in many others, because there's really not often a time to shut things down and step back. So it's kind of like, things just keep going. It feels like there's never a break. And so they are challenged with kind of being disciplined enough to kind of manage the things that could elevate their anxiety, even though in the moment it could feel like it's helping them. All right, so it was developed by Marshall Linehan, and initially for chronically suicidal people. So it's really for the most challenging emotional challenges, but really it's become something now that obviously is more broad, and it's really about building skills. It's really about learning, how do I cope with, how do I communicate effectively. So aims to replace problem behaviors with skillful behaviors, help people experience a range of emotions without acting on those emotions, navigate relationships, and create, helping people create a life worth living, which is really kind of the most important piece to that. It's okay. Because sometimes it is hard to find that meaning and that value of what is this all for? What's this all about? So, DBT kind of helps you look at, okay, there are going to be ups and downs. How do I enjoy the ups, and how do I manage the downs, and still appreciate what's going on and experience all of what life brings. These are the components of DBT. So there's with individual therapy, you make a commitment to change, and it's obviously a little bit more involved and process oriented and skill based. So you really individually focused, enhancing capability. So there are skill groups that you can get involved with, which is really about learning different skills, practicing and reinforcing those skills. Generalizing those behaviors, so just reinforcing, continuing to use them. Phone coaching, or in school, it could just be, obviously coaching in the moment or as needed. So like if the student would come down and is experiencing the challenges, we might suggest that they, first tell us kind of like the things that they've tried, the skills that they've used already, and then kind of go from there. But it's really about kind of like, what have you done? And then if you need additional support, how can I help you? And then enhancing therapist capability and motivation. So there's consult teams here in the building. So we meet as a small consult team, and then we also have a larger consult team that includes a DBT coordinator for the district and counselors and some other staff. So kind of all just working and being on the same page. Yeah. All right, so this is kind of like just a visual of what we kind of just talked about, but so really, if you look at it as a tiered level of support from least restrictive or like general population, all students, to the most intensive support, you have the kind of here we have health classes. So all students are exposed to certain skills, DBT, they have the language. So that is, for all students, in a way to kind of infuse that into the curriculum here. The second level would be if there are the students having more challenges, and they might benefit from like a counseling group or social skills group here, and placed with other students and go through a little bit more of a involved program around the skills. And then the third tier, more intensive, would be the individual therapy, which obviously is just targeting their specific needs. You just talked about the coaching, so assisting as they may need it, and then the consult team. And then the other tiers are kind of like outpaid, much more restricted, much more challenged support.
Right, just a question, the consult team works directly with the select population or the universal population, or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the consult team is more for us, so like we'll meet. So we have Dana and myself and another social worker will meet every other week, and we'll kind of just talk about how things are going and getting support around what we might need. And then we also have on the opposite weeks or once a month, we meet as a full team. So it's not about the consult team is not direct support with the students, it's more for us.
So you'll see on the next slide, I'm going to talk, you don't have to go there yet. I'll talk about research that separates out between the steps A, which is the universal, and the school-based DBT. And so what this visual is really trying to get at is there's more intervention that's happening as you go up the pyramid. But at that universal level, that's what all students are getting in their health class. They get DBT skills as part of the curriculum. And then the counseling department does have groups that run that any student can technically participate in. So like that's what the steps A would be composed of, is the health classes and the opportunity for general skills groups. But it's really focused on kind of just getting the information out there and helping students to feel more capable of taking on those skills and using them. As you go up that pyramid and things get moved into the school-based DBT, which is a more comprehensive model, there's also involvement of the individual therapy, which is kind of increasing that motivation to change, as he was talking about on the previous slide, what's getting in the way of me using my skills, kind of really problem solving around not just you have the information, but now like, how am I helping you to use it more effectively? The consult team happens no matter what. It's something that's a component of DBT that anyone who's practicing DBT should be on a consult team. And then that coaching, which I know Brian mentioned it, I think it's really important to kind of note, is the coaching is really different than individual therapy. In individual therapy, you're really increasing that motivation to change, working through barriers. The in vivo coaching is like, it's not a session. It's a really short moment of you're in a high level of stress. What skill can I help you identify to use so you can return to your day? Which I think is also just important in like what we're reinforcing, right? Getting back to class, or, performing in a moment where they don't like presenting in front of a class, right? Like sometimes you might need a skill to step out of the room and reset, but that in vivo coaching is really short term. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just have a question about what does the student experience look like? Like, can you give us a scenario of, student A is experiencing this scenario, how do they access you for that in vivo coaching? Like, what does that look like? So people on the outside who don't see what happens here day to day.
In my world, I would say I get kind of two scenarios. The students having a difficult time, they might send me an email and say, hey, can I see you for a few minutes? I'll email back and say, I'm free at this time. I'll call you down, or I'll just call them down when I can. What I think is also really important is sometimes students need to wait to access that in vivo coaching. And that's also really important in reinforcing. I would say about half the time I'm not available immediately. When I call that student down, they've already figured out what they needed to do. I'll talk about reinforcement later on, but it's also really important to give students kind of that buffer time. Some students walk down to guidance and say, I need to speak with somebody. They'll have a short brief session, identify what they need to do to cope and deal with the moment, and then get back to their day. So in the school, that's what it looks like. In kind of the original DBT model, which is, outside of school, that might be a phone coaching. You text or call your therapist. And again, that therapist might be in a session, they might need to wait that hour, but again, it's getting that hands-on in the moment. How do I help move through this situation?
Just adding to what I think Christina was saying. So is it the student has to engage you? The student has to know that they have the need to speak to you, or is it that you guys get flagged at some point and say, you know, so and so is having a hard time. How does that? Is that how it works, or?
Again, for the in vivo coaching, you're asking?
Yeah. Mhm.
So they do engage us, they reach out to us, whether that's by email or coming down to guidance. And then, you know, maybe someone up front, or we have 2 secretaries up there who might let us know, or they might let us know, you know, once we get out of a meeting. But in that scenario, the in vivo coaching, the student is reaching out and saying, I've tried some things on my own, it hasn't worked, I need to problem solve this so I can get back to my day. That is different than the structured skills groups, that is different than the planned individual, you know, sessions that someone might have on their counseling plan.
Okay. And if as a parent you have a concern, do we connect with you? And how does it work? Or do we work through this, the teacher or the main, how would we engage?
I think that's kind of a little bit situational, right? But if you had a concern, social emotional concern, you know, you might engage either the student's counselor if they're working with myself or Ryan. You would engage their team. If it's a challenge directly related to a teacher, you know, we always recommend kind of speaking with them first. But again, when it's social emotional engaging, that student's team.
Okay, thank you.
So I had 2 questions. The first is, if I asked my son, do you know what in vivo coaching is? Would he know?
Probably not, because we don't call it in vivo coaching, right? Our students know they can access us in the moment. Who are, again, so it's a really small tier of students who are working in this higher tier. It's not the higher level is the students who are accessing our DBT skills group, who are who might be working individually with either one of us or a counselor. It's what's the general, like what the majority of students are getting is that DBT instruction in health classes.
So when you were talking about the skills group, how is that formed? And again, how does that work?
So this, I want to say, I don't know if I started here last year. This skills group didn't run last year. In my time here, it's our first year running the DBT skills group. That group was formed based on recommendations from counselors for students who might benefit from some skills. We are looking over time to expand that. I know there's conversation about not next year, but the year after, actually creating like a credit bearing class where students can learn DBT skills and kind of have this option to elect into. But right now, the group that's running was based on recommendations from counselors of students who might need that level of support.
Okay, the other question I had is, so the student is having a moment in a class. So you use like the example of they don't like to present. It could be anything. So they're not waiting to come down and see you. How is the teacher trained to assist with that in the moment?
The general classroom teacher? I would say a lot of our teachers are like pretty aware of students if they need to take a break. I can't speak for every single teacher and say, you know, how they would handle that situation in the moment. We do have teachers who have, you know, called down and said, I have a student who needs to speak with somebody, like we're sending them down. I would say that's probably case by case.
Okay.
I also think that it's important to share that this presentation was presented by you guys to the entire teacher, to all the staff. So I think it's a first move and it's a push, and I would assume that the idea is that you are helping the teachers gain you know, a basic level of proficiency with what the vocabulary and the components and the fundamentals are for DBT, so they could do that first emergency. The idea, I guess that's what the situation would be. Teachers, if they have that situation, because that's what we would want as parents, right? That the teachers are able to have at least that foundational part, be able to troubleshoot in the moment if and as needed, and then, you know, send it up to rest, which I think is what the overall idea is in the school.
Did you say that you're looking into having a credit bearing class about this? Did I hear that correctly?
We're looking, we're working on it. I don't have like plans right now. And promise and share, but that's been a conversation. That's also a negative word, and we would like to be able to offer this to students in a more broad base, because we recognize the importance as our students are struggling. All right, so as I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about the research on why DBT in schools. So this on this column right here, where it's talking about the universal DBT, which is again just the health classes. Essentially, it's what's accessed by all students. There was a 96% of students who reported the curriculum to be helpful. This right here is talking about the BAS. That's a standardized test that looks at external emotion symptoms and internalizing problems. And there were significant student reductions on those BAS ratings, as well as improvements in executive function on the brief, which is another standardized test. So that universal method, when students had access to increased skills, generally showed improvements. The comprehensive school-based model showed even more specific improvements, such as reduced disciplinary referrals, absenteeism suspensions, reductions in depression, anxiety, anger, social stress, and that NSSI is non-suicidal self-injury, so the self-harming behaviors. There was improvements in adaptive coping skills, increased capabilities to tolerate distress, and decreases in emotion regulation. So overall, there's really strong research, and the research is relatively new. As you can see, a lot of it's from 2015, 2018, 2016, earliest being 2011 there. It's relatively new, but there's really strong research behind it, and I know research is continuing. Awesome. So one of the really important things about DBT, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of like the principles behind it. And then I think MaryFaith will be coming as she talks about the skills, if not, we can dive into them. But was this the first one?
I think so.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's okay. I just got a little thrown off. So the biosocial theory is a main theory that is showing up with DBT. And what it's talking about is when all of these things on the board, which I'll go through in a moment, interact, we tend to get emotion dysfunction, like emotion dysregulation. So the biological vulnerability is some of us are more sensitive than others, right? Some of us might be bothered by something, someone else might not. Someone might have a higher level of reactivity. Someone also might have a slower return to baseline. That biological vulnerability to emotions kind of just is, and that's okay. But when that's paired with an inability to effectively regulate your emotions, as well as an invalidating environment over time, that becomes a really big challenge for anyone. So the DBT is going to work on bringing in that capability to effectively manage emotions. And a really core principle, which I'll talk about in a moment, is validation. So when we have an invalidating environment, that's basically communicating to someone what you're thinking, feeling, you as a person, it's not valid. Over time, that can lead us to the self-invalidation, like what I'm feeling doesn't make sense, isn't real. And what happens with that is our emotions are information to us, then we learn we can't trust what we're feeling. That's a really hard way to navigate the world. So we really want to bring in, with the DBT perspective, a lot of validation with the skills. Go ahead. So
Sorry, but just to help everybody perceive that, can you give us an example of what that looks like? Like just a fictional scenario of a student hearing their perspective being invalidated. And
perspectives of being invalidated is the simple statement of, oh, you're overreacting. Oh, you shouldn't worry about that. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like those are invalidating statements that tell somebody, like, to you, it may not be a big deal. To you, it may not be worrisome. To that person in the moment, it may be. And we'll talk a lot about validation. So I'll encourage you to just bear with me, because I'll provide some examples and also encourage you to think about like how we can respond when we maybe don't want to encourage a behavior, and yet we can still validate how someone's feeling. But it's that saying like what you're feeling is not valid, or your expression of yourself is not valid, right?
if somebody worrying about an exam, for example, and they
Like, oh, it's no big deal, don't stress about it.
Right, and that's the, I think one of the challenges with it, it's not negative, it's not, sometimes it can be positive, like, don't worry about it, or at least this is happening, or, you know, that, so it is a balance, and then you have to, you know, you don't want to enable by that, so it's something that we all kind of work on, but I know there's a whole segment.
Yeah, so validation is a really big piece of DBT. So the first word in DBT is dialectical. We're always talking about this concept that two opposing things can be true at the same time. So one of those really main principles is validation and change. So when we talk about validation, we're basically showing we're listening, we understand, we're being non-judgmental, we care about the relationship, and we can disagree without having a big conflict. So it's taking that time to show, like, I'm hearing you, I'm hearing your perspective, and I can hold your experience as true, whether or not I agree with X, Y, and Z. Validation overall improves relationships, and we can then use that relationship to prompt change. DBT holds this assumption that everyone is trying the best they can, right? We're holding what your experience is valid, and at the same time, we need to learn more effective ways to manage our problems more effectively. So we're validating and we're encouraging change at the same time. You can go to the next slide.
I wanted to say something there because to Christine's question, I think it's important because as a parent, you can feel, I'm just generalizing, you could feel as a parent that, oh my God, I've said to my kid, you know, don't worry, that's not a big deal. And under the concept of DBT, to your point, it depends on how you say it, because most likely it is something that doesn't entail that level of worry, and that's important for them to hear. But the validation piece is the piece that's so key, right? Which is saying, I hear you, I respect what you feel, I know that you're feeling yucky or whatever it is with a smaller child that you're not feeling well. But, you know, let's put this in context, it's not that much of a deal. So it all depends on how you also express which you said, right? So.
And to your point, in DBT, there's a skill called, it's an emotion regulation skill called check the facts. So if we're validating how you're feeling, we're holding space, so then that person can hear you, or they're, you know, whoever's supporting them, and checking the facts, challenging their assumptions, challenging their judgments, their opinions, and actually checking the facts and assessing real threat, right? So it's again that balance of when we start with a place of validation, we can then encourage change.
I was just gonna say, in my experience working with adults and trying to help them to improve, I found that the adults who've had experience as athletes or as musicians, who've had athletic coaches critiquing them to try to get them to improve, or music teachers always trying to help correct intonation problems, rhythm problems. Those are the adults who can adapt fairly well. Whereas those who haven't had quite that experience, they tend to see a critique as a criticism, and they take it personally. Their ego takes it as some sort of terrible assault. And I see this with a lot of teenagers as well, that even if they are athletes and musicians, they might take a critique you're trying to give, a suggestion for how to improve something as assault to their ego. You know, so I think they make that mistake there, regardless of how somebody might be trying to present.
I don't know if you're going to go into this at some point, but do you have a means of identifying when the child you're speaking to has heard you? Like, how would you know? Are there, you know, because what I've noticed with teenagers particularly, you do all this, and then at some point they kind of shut down, and you kind of know when they've shut down. And how would you, are there signs that you can say, they're not hearing me anymore, or now I see that they have heard me, and this is how you would know, or how they would respond? You know, like in the old days, the therapist would be like, well, how does that make you feel? And then they would just say, you know, but that obviously doesn't work. So I'm curious, how do we know it's even what we're doing when we're validating that it's actually coming off the right way?
I'm a big fan of asking, but I will often say to teens, like, I am open to all sorts of feedback, the good, bad, the ugly, anything in between. So if I'm not sure how something landed, or if maybe they left my office and I'm not sure, right? Then I'm modeling a repair and relationship by checking in and asking. And sometimes, I might be overthinking something that is no big deal. And sometimes they might let me know. But again, disengagement, and you can sometimes tell by eye contact, body language, and that just might be not the right time when anyone is escalated. Really, the thing to do is distress tolerance, bring it down in the moment, so you don't make the moment worse, and then you work on the other pieces, whether it's rebuilding, emotion regulation, interpersonal effectiveness. You work on that after, when someone's in the space to do that. So it's not a black and white answer because everyone kind of presents differently, but I would say sometimes those body language cues can help to signal, and sometimes it's okay to ask. I think it also just kind of shows you care. Like, how did that land for you? I was trying something different there, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, I agree. Sometimes, they may not be in a position to want to solve the problem at that moment. So it's almost like the best strategy in the world, it still won't work. And also, sometimes it's a little bit harder as a parent to get there. Although, we could say something similar and it might get there. So, that's the nature. So yeah, it's noticing kind of where they're at, their level of if they want to solve if they're ready to solve a problem or look at the next steps. But sometimes they're so stuck in that emotional state that it is just some time.
I would also, just as you were saying that, thinking about, like, we're talking about DBT as a intervention, but before people get to DBT, there's often a whole phase of like commitment building, like building the buy-in to actually participate and use DBT. And they'll often talk in DBT about, like, the phrase, I think it's freedom to choose in the absence of alternatives, like the freedom to, like, you have the freedom to choose to participate in DBT. And there might be an absence of alternatives. Like, if what you're doing is working, you might not have the buy-in to change this, right? When we had that first slide, like, if you're effectively escaping that emotion and getting out of what you need to get, like, avoiding the emotion, why would you change what you're doing? This is work. Like, this is a lot of work. So there's sometimes also that commitment needed before this can be effective. So I think it's also important to recognize everyone's on their own path, and we can work with them on building commitment, and ultimately our students are the drivers in their seat. And honestly, as adults, we're also the drivers in our seat. We can engage in this as much as we want as well. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so continuing on validation, we're acknowledging that validation does not necessarily mean agreement. So just because you're validating how someone is feeling does not mean you are saying it is okay to throw the chair across the room. You can say, I can see that you were really angry, and still set a limit. It just is acknowledging that we understand where the person's coming from. So I know you were really nervous about that test, and it's not okay to skip class, right? So we can hold validation even when we're setting limits as adults. And we can disagree as well. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about dialectics. And with this, we're helping students and teens, and even ourselves as adults, to be able to hold that more than one thing can be true at the same time. So with this, we're moving away from either or thinking to a both and. So it's not you study for your test or you do well, right? Like, you can study really hard and still need to stay after school. Like, those can both be true. Substituting the word but for and, when we tend to have a sentence with but, people kind of forget what you said before it, and then only hear kind of what you maybe have to give as a critique. So being able to use the word and holds both things as true. Avoiding the kind of extreme words, always, never, make me. Being descriptive rather than judgmental. So instead of saying, oh, you always miss the bus in the morning, maybe this week you missed the bus 3 times. I'm really frustrated because I've been late for work, so I had to drive you. Right? Being really descriptive on what it is that occurred and how you are feeling, rather than saying you're lazy or this, right? Practicing looking at all sides of the situation, holding different points of view. You may not agree with your teen's point of view, but being able to hold it and hold space, that again will increase the validation. Kind of remembering that no one has the absolute truth and being open to alternatives. Some examples of like shifting to I feel statements rather than you are, you should. I feel frustrated when you break curfew instead of you should always be here by 9, right? Like I'm really disappointed about that. Accept that different opinions can be valid even if you don't agree with them. Not assuming you know what other people are thinking, checking your assumptions. So and then the last part is not expecting others to read your mind. So sometimes you might feel like you're saying something 1,000 times and your teen still needs to hear exactly what you need from them, because they can't read your mind, you can't read theirs. That open communication is really important. So again, just holding more than one perspective is really important. Go ahead. All right, so I mentioned that I talked a little bit about reinforcement. So DBT skills, the skills training, those are the different categories of skills. In the universal model, it's just the first 4. So mindfulness, so being aware of what you're experiencing in the moment. Distress tolerance is kind of bringing down the intensity of the emotion. You're not actually changing it. You're not helping yourself feel better. You're just making yourself feel a little less bad so you don't do something to make the situation worse. Emotion regulation, changing that emotion, and interpersonal effectiveness is how we relate to others. And then the walking the middle path is something that in a more comprehensive model sometimes includes parents and uses that dialectical framework. I won't go into that right now just because it's not what's brought into our school right now. But those are the different skills that are a part of DBT. So we change behavior by having increased capacity and skills, but also this concept of contingency management. I'm not sure if these are kind of familiar words, but positive reinforcement, getting praise or reward, working towards earning something. Negative reinforcement is when we're removing a consequence. So maybe students do really well in class and the teacher gets rid of homework, or your teen is coming home really consistently on their curfew. Maybe you now trust them and get rid of their curfew or adjust it. So it's getting rid of a negative consequence that someone else doesn't want. Extinction is when we reduce the likelihood of a behavior because the reinforcement is removed. So with that, maybe you're not paying attention or responding to a behavior that you want to get rid of. So when someone is, yelling at you and really escalating, you're going to intentionally stay really calm. The thing to note about extinction is things get worse before they get better. So you can almost expect an extinction burst. So if you're, again, in that dynamic of arguing, really loud, that person might start to escalate and get in your face and, obviously without maintaining safety, right? But expecting things to get worse before the behavior starts to dissipate, but over time that there will be a reduction of the likelihood of the behavior with extinction. And then punishment is when there's a consequence that results in a decrease in behavior. So that might be taking away cell phone for something that you're not hoping for. So the reason these two are so important is every day in every interaction, we're reinforcing something. So what it's talking about down here is we want to be really mindful of not reinforcing crisis behaviors, especially when it's not a crisis. So when there's safety at risk, of course, we want to respond. When we're really angry about something that is, maybe we had a fight with a friend, or maybe we're really upset about a grade, recognizing that that is not a crisis. It might feel really intense, right? We can hold that emotion as valid, and yet it may not require the same level of urgency and response time. And when we swoop in and try to help our young teens solve the problem immediately, we're actually reinforcing that that was a crisis. And sometimes when we allow space for it, we can allow the emotion to come down and our teens can kind of work through and problem solve and use their skills in a way where they feel more effective and better about themselves. So I think it's really important that we're aware of what we're reinforcing, in any moment, and just keeping in mind, it's not just increasing skills, but it's how we're reinforcing it. there's a skill that helps teens to, or really anyone, to ask for something and be assertive. As parents, you may not be able to grant that request, but you can still acknowledge, like, I really appreciate that you came forward and talked to me about it, or I really, appreciate the way this happened. I can't do this today. Maybe next time we can do X, even if it's a modification, but just really reinforcing the skill use rather than only those crisis behaviors. Does that make sense? Not sure where MaryFaith is, but we can jump into this. So these are the 4 modules of DBT. So mindfulness is having the non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, including thoughts and emotions. So like without holding judgment, just being present of what's happening right here, right now. Again, that distress tolerance is learning to tolerate emotions in a crisis situation without making things worse. Emotion regulation, changing unwanted emotions, reducing vulnerability to emotions. And the last one being interpersonal effectiveness, improving and maintaining relationships as well as self-respect. So not just relationships with others, but relationships with yourself. And you can see here on this like continuum, we're still working with this idea of acceptance and change. So on this side, these 2 skills are more acceptance based, like what's happening, I'm holding acceptance for that. And these 2 skills are working on the change side. How do I change my experience?
All right, I can talk about mindfulness. So it's to allow us to respond to things instead of automatically reacting to them. To pay attention to thoughts and feelings moment by moment without judgment. So, it's kind of like, it's really sort of like going back to the basics on things in our life, which is basically there's so much going on around it that sometimes we forget to think. And we're constantly being responsive, or sometimes, with phones and technology, sense of urgency is always is higher. We tend to be a little bit more impulsive. So this is just a way to kind of stop, just be in this moment, do something very small that can gain almost 100% of your attention. Undivided attention obviously is a challenge for all of us and for kids. So, but if you can find a way to stop and get that level of control and appreciate a moment, or listen to something, or think about something more than you usually would, get away from everything else going on around you. Being present without judgment is a great skill, make you happier, and can maintain some lower, feelings of calm. Our pain and mental discomfort come from judgment we place on what we experience rather than what is actually happening. So again, it's really about kind of just experiencing and not judging. And here it talks about the 3 states of mind. So there's reasonable mind, which is kind of like facts or information that we have, kind of more scientific and data oriented. Emotional is really just experiencing emotionally what's happening in a moment, and wise is kind of that happy medium. So you want to be able to have both, but obviously having too much of one, not feeling much and just kind of being, and feeling too much is you can be more reactive. So the wise mind is the combination of both, being able to look at pros and cons, or being able to say, I feel this way, but let me really think about it and look at information, and does that align with my perception? Obviously, that's a very mature skill, but that's kind of what we're looking to kind of teach, is being able to combine both. Appreciate the way that you're feeling, notice if you're feeling anxious, don't ignore it, experience that emotion, and also test it. Test to see if the information is, and if you can do that, if you kind of get in the habit of doing that, you do tend to get a little bit more control and regulation, because it's not just an emotional experience. It's really something that you can use information to guide. How am I supposed to feel? Even if I feel this way, maybe You know, maybe there's information that says, you know, even though I'm really nervous for this math test, let me look back, actually, you know, I've been nervous before and I've done very well before. You know, the likelihood of me doing well again is higher than not. So, and being, you know, helping to stay calm will likely help you do as best as you can on the test.
So the distress tolerance is about getting through that painful moment without making it worse. I'm sure you've heard me say that a couple of times now. But really just focusing your awareness on something other than the hurtful thoughts and emotions. So these skills are very often distraction skills. They're just something to immerse your attention in the moment. So like this improved skill takes you through, a lot of the DBT skills are acronyms. So one is like to imagine something, like a visualization, meaning, find meaning in what you're doing, pause, give yourself a moment, relax, maybe relax your muscles, one thing, so like focusing on one thing at a time. Vacation, just taking a break, even if it's like a brief mental vacation, where's that place I love to go, and encouragement is another one. There's a lot of other skills like self-soothe skills, use the different senses, so like how do I focus on just what I can smell, maybe that's lotion in my bag, maybe there's just a feeling of touch. I like the feeling of my sweater. A lot of our kids like their pets, so like at home, that's a great skill. But there's many skills in the distress tolerance area that just really bring you into the moment by distracting on something else.
Just gonna comment on the vacation.
Yeah.
I would think for many of our modern teens, their vacation's gonna be on the phone, which comes with its own.
Which is
Trigger.
really, no, I think your point is really valid because there's other skills that mention like maybe watch a funny video, you know, something like that. And what I think is really important about these distress tolerance skills is it's also bringing in that mindfulness piece of I'm fully participating in what I'm doing. So a lot of our kids will tell us, you know, oh, like I tried distracting with a video on my phone, but it didn't work. And a lot of times, you know, our kids are just kind of scrolling mindlessly, but they're not actually zeroed in on what they're looking at. It's not that the phone is necessarily the problem, it's how we're doing it. It's kind of that mindless aspect of like, oh yeah, I tried that, but it didn't work. But if you actually pull up maybe a video or beach waves or, you know, there's a lot of like mindfulness things on YouTube where you can watch, I don't know, water and nature and things like that. Like if you're mindfully, fully participating in that, that would then be an appropriate use of some of these skills. When you're just scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, and kind of mindlessly doing that, that's not actually fully jumping in. Does that make sense?
It does give you
Yeah.
a vacation and a break, right? It's not the same. So it's really purposeful, you know, with intention and actually, you know, reinforcing self-discipline. You know, like I need this to work because like scrolling things is not helpful.
What do you think about some of the apps, like the Calm app and different things like that? Are there any that actually kind of resonate with this generation of youth that would be good tools for them? You know, if they were looking for a digital vacation?
I mean, I've personally used Insight Timer before. That's another free one. Calm, I know you have to pay for. I think our kids tend to have a song that they know works for them. I think they tend to have a video that they know works for them.
Puppy videos, I guess.
Yeah, I would say more often I'm hearing about that, but again, I have to really kind of have that conversation of, are you throwing yourself fully into the moment to say like, this is way too intense for me to experience. I'm so angry, furious. I'm going to create a different emotion or maybe not necessarily create just yet, but like I'm going to bring it down by just distracting myself and watching my favorite cat video, you know. And it's really unique for each person, but like holding ice can be another one. It's a really intense sensation. It's hard to focus on anything else. So thinking about a lot of your different distraction skills, they have a lot of acronyms for these. There's like an accepts, there's the self-soothe and the improve. This one is stop, just stop, take a step back, observe and proceed mindfully. But these are, again, just skills to pause in the moment and bring the intensity down so you don't make things worse.
Usually when you're doing that, think what I'm understanding you're saying, it's a healthy quick fix. So those apps like Calm and Headspace and all those apps, I think they're used more for practicing the habit of
Right.
calming, but for a quick fix and in a healthy way, it's something that resonates with you. So it could even go through your pictures.
Yeah.
Or stuff like that.
Exactly.
And to your point, teens, I mean, those are apps that are paid, so you would have to have gone through your parents to get the app, to download the
Right.
app, to, you know.
And that might also take too long, right? In the distress tolerance skill, we might need just like something in the moment to take my mind off of it. Because again, I'm just trying to not act on my urge. That's all I'm trying to do in distress tolerance. Emotion regulation is when we're trying to change how we feel. But right now, we're just trying not to make the situation worse by acting on our reactive urges.
Yeah, you want to start the process of coming down. You don't want to continue the process of going up. And everybody obviously goes from kind of like crisis to calm at different speeds. Some people are very fast, and some people are very slow. And that a lot of times is biological too. So far as that, what we do too is helping them understand that, that could be the way that you are built in a way. Could also be habits and stuff like that, but you might need that time. So it is buying, sometimes, this is buying time, stopping you in your tracks. And most of the time, if you take space when you're heightened, you come back less heightened, right? You can be a little bit more calm and you can deal with your problems much better when you're at that place. So it's really stopping you in your tracks. And starting that process of coming down.
So it sounds like what you're saying to me, what I'm hearing is that everybody's distress tolerance toolkit is going to look somewhat different.
Definitely.
Because they're all individual.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide, there's some more distress tolerance skills on there. So like there's the tip one, the first thing has to do with like temperature. There's a diver's reflex that's kind of like in our face that if we put cold ice water or something like that, it can help bring our nervous system down. So like that's one where kids can just go splash water on their face in the bathroom. Sometimes intense exercise, paced breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. We just talked about improves. Accepts is another one. That's like activities, make a contribution. I'm blanking on all of them right now. But so again, they're just ways of putting your mind onto something different. And then this right here is like a pro-con list of like, what are the pros of acting on my crisis urge? What are the cons? What are the pros of resisting my crisis urge? What are the cons? This one takes a little bit more time. Can be a really great way of like saying like, I really want to do this right now. Is it worth it? And then over time you work on like, what are the short-term and long-term benefits of that. But there's a ton of different distress tolerance skills. And even within one acronym, you might like 2 of the letters and none of the rest, right? So you might have a completely different toolkit than the person sitting next to you.
I got it's activities, contributing.
Yep.
Comparisons.
Yep. So
Emotion, push, think, and sensation.
thank you. So the activity, focus on a different activity, contribution, maybe do something good for someone else, compare yourself to someone who's less fortunate than you in a situation. So we're not comparing to someone who's doing better, we're comparing to someone who might be less fortunate or a time you felt you were not doing as well, to kind of show where you are and put that into perspective. Emotion, create a different emotion. Maybe it's watching that funny video, listening to a different song. Replace your thoughts. So maybe you're reading out loud and just kind of replacing those thoughts. And then what was the sensation? Yep. So again, bringing in different sensation, whether that might be taking a hot shower, holding the ice, something like that. Sorry, a lot of these overlap. So go ahead.
Are the slides that you're showing now part of that first tier instruction that you're giving the kids in health class?
Yeah, so these slides were put together by MaryFaith, one of the health teachers, on skills that they bring into class. Go ahead.
Okay, so what are emotion regulation skills that help us understand the function of emotions, to recognize the impulsive action urge that accompanies each emotion, helps us to reduce vulnerability, increase resiliency, improve overall mental health. So we're looking to understand our emotions better, and control and manage it so that we're making better, good choices. So it's not, I think part of it too is understanding that we're going to, there's a 100% chance that we're going to experience a good emotion and 100% chance we're going to experience a negative emotion moving forward. So, being able to understand how we feel, understand our urges, step away and look at ways to manage those emotions as they're happening is the goal, and it's really just kind of the power that comes with learning these skills. Start.
Quick, but so these are a bunch of the skills that you can use for DBT, and I've been managing them right now, realizing I've got to get to another meeting. So there was some panic that was going on, and I thought, okay, I could run and scream and shout, and the kids are probably going to be alarmed, or I could take a deep breath. And I said, okay, I'm just going to text Megan and say I'm coming down here as soon as possible. So one of the skills that we use is opposite action skill. So when we have all of these different emotions, we have an instant trigger that our body is telling us to use. So if you're really angry, and I'm assuming you all have kids because you are here, we can get really mad and we might want to yell at them, like just kind of argue back with them. But sometimes taking a deep breath, walking away for a second, and then coming back into the room can remove that emotion, and you can handle it in a much better way. So these are just some examples of the different ones that there might be, and doing the opposite action of what your body is telling you to do gives you that pause before you maybe behave in a way that is not going to be as advantageous. Now, it's okay to be sad and it's okay to cry. There's situations that that's an okay thing to do. And other times you might have to take a look at those emotions and say, does this match that situation? And gives you that pause. We have a lot of acronyms in DBT. ABC Please is one of them. And it's really these skills in here, when you look at it and what the letters are saying, you do probably already. And so when we're talking to our students, we like to tell them it's important to build positive experiences. Our kids and students are really, they have a lot going on. They have school, they have their after school activities, they have responsibilities at home, they have homework, and they get overwhelmed very easily. But if they take the time, we tell them, even for 5 minutes, do something you like. If it's read a book or have a coffee with a friend or talk, accumulating positives is important to build up the important things in life that make you feel good. Building mastery is important. So if you get those skills to try to do something really well and you feel good about it, it's a positive experience, kind of relating to letter A. And the cope ahead is something that many of us do already. What can we do to prepare for a situation? If I know I have this, this, and this on this day and a homework assignment due, how can I pre-plan my time so that I can cope ahead to manage that, rather than, oh no, this is due that day and now I have all of these things to do. So coping ahead, and it's different for everyone and how they're going to cope. If they know that presentation skills, they come in, they present in my class for health, and they're thinking, I hate being up in front of people, I'm really nervous. How can we prepare ahead of time? Can you practice in front of a parent? Can you practice in front of a mirror? Go over the speech with your teacher ahead of time. Those would be all skills to cope ahead. And sometimes people forget the coping ahead part and the stress just comes on. And the other part, ABC Please, the please skills are just taking care of your body. It's so important because if you are at your peak ability physically, then you can handle the mental emotions a lot better. Treating physical illness, if you're sick, take the time to get better. Eat a balanced diet, avoid mood altering drugs, get enough sleep. Myself included, don't get enough sleep in the middle of the night. 8 to 10 hours. I'm lucky if I could get 6. I have 3 kids, 8, 5, and 3 at home. We're really busy. So sleeping is a little bit of a challenge, but those things can really help, and get exercise. Ride the wave is another skill. It's not always easy to do, but there's some things that happen in our life that are out of our control.
They bring on a lot of emotion, they cause a lot of anxiety, but we can't do anything about it, even though we're trying to fight it. So just let it ride the wave, let the emotion go, let what's happening happen, and just try to get to the other side. It's not always going to work, but it is a strategy to keep in mind. So interpersonal effectiveness skills are skills of talking and communicating with other people. And it's really important to use these skills because it can accomplish a couple things. It gets your needs met, it gets you to do things you want someone to do for them, and it gets others to take your opinion seriously. When we are, like, I think of the example of working with my own kids, my littles at home, and there's times where if we can have the conversation and talk to them gently or kindly and kind of explain what's going on, it makes it go a lot smoother than if I just said, you need to do this right now because this is what's going on. So there's a lot of different ways that you can effectively communicate with each other. I give examples. Sometimes students get upset with grades and they don't feel that maybe it was the proper grade. And I remember I give this to my students, I got an email, all caps, not addressed to anyone. You need to change my grade right now because I don't like this grade. And I'm sure they were very heated in the moment. They were upset. That was a grade that they weren't happy with. And after that, when the student actually came into class, I said, let's think about how this came across if you were to receive an email this way. And so talking about the communication skills, how are you going to get what you want in a way that you're going to keep your respect and be able to communicate effectively with people? So there's a couple different skills that there are. I'm just gonna, if you want to go to the next one, thank you. One is the give skill. And so it stands for using a gentle approach. So speaking kindly, being mindful of the other emotions, showing interest, because a lot of times, and in this world of technology, and I'm a person who does it too, you have this going on here, I'm here, I'm trying to talk to someone else, and I'm not showing that I'm vested in that conversation. Taking a moment to put that phone away. I've been making it a task at my home, trying to like hide my phone because it's so tempting when that ding goes off, and just put it totally away so I'm not looking at it. So my kids see I'm there for them. So showing that interest. Validation, and I believe in the beginning you talked a little about it, but it's such an important thing. It's not saying that you agree with them. My kids came home from school and they said something happened at school. I understand that this could be frustrating, I could say to them, versus, yeah, you're right, that is going on. I might not agree with them, but I can show them that I am hearing what they're saying by validating it. And then use the and statements that was talked about earlier as well. And at the same time, this is what you could be thinking. So validation is important. And an easy manner. If I came in, I'm a little flustered. You have to kind of feel relaxed, and you have to be able to talk to people where they feel like you're there for them. And so that can make a big difference. So that's the give skill. The next skill is the dear man skill. Again, I was saying a lot of acronyms, it's a lot. So I always have to check back at these to see what the list is. But when you think about the words, they do make sense. Describing a situation. So here's the example. My paper says I received a D on the test if they want to go talk to a teacher. So here's the fact. Express it. I am frustrated with this because I know I did such a huge amount of studying and I still have not gotten the grade I feel I should have gotten with all this preparation. I would like to go over the answers. So assert yourself. This is what I'm looking for, not just complaining about the grade, not just getting upset, but this is what I need so that the person you're speaking to knows what is going on. Reinforce it. I really appreciate to review those answers with you. And you're doing this mindfully. Repeat yourself, ask us again, be in the wise mind, appear confident. Many people will come up into a room and they're talking to the teacher and their eyes might be down or they might be fidgeting like this because they're nervous, and we get the nerves, like we're human beings, we do this ourselves. But appearing confident can make a big difference in how you're approaching someone, and be flexible. If you said, I don't like my grade, you need to give me this grade, when that email came across to me, that was a little harsh, I felt, in the response, but hey, I understand that, you know, a D is not what I want. Is there something we could do? Maybe I could do some extra credit or retake the test again, or maybe combine the scores afterwards and get a score, and be flexible in what the other person is thinking, because it's not all about you at that time. You have to take in everyone. So Dear Man is one of the skills we also teach our students in 10th grade as well.
So I'll just briefly talk about some of these books on the screen. So the top 3 books are clinicians' manuals. So these are this one right here, DBT skills training with Marshall Linehan, is kind of the original clinician's manual that was created that has the skills, and people who are trained in DBT often learn this. The adaptations for schools really were led by Jill Ruffus and Alec Miller, and they've created these 2 adaptations based on their research. And so the book that's used to guide health classes is the DBT skills in schools. And then the one in the middle is what's used for that more comprehensive school treatment. So these are kind of where a lot of the training comes from. I know we were asked for some book recommendations. I will say these books on the bottom I have not read and cannot personally recommend, but I was looking into some research on books that could be for a parent audience. So there's a National Alliance with Borderline Personality Disorder. These are not all strictly geared towards that, but that's a treatment modality that really adheres to DBT, and why I went kind of in that direction for parent recommendation. So the first one is focused on DBT personality disorder in adolescents. And then these 2 right here is just parenting a child who has intense emotions and the power of validation. So again, I haven't read these and can't say I fully vet them, but they do have that DBT lens in them. So I just wanted to share them as possible resources. But this is the top is really what informs our practice here. And then this, the feedback form is optional. A part of my goal with the district is to do more parent programming and kind of do more, whether it's presentations, conversations with parents. So if there is feedback you would like to give on how this presentation went or topics you would like to hear about in the future, I would appreciate the feedback, but that's, again, that's really for me if you have the time and would like to share that info. I have paper copies if anyone wants that before we go.
Question back?
I was just gonna make a comment.
Oh, yes.
I was just gonna add that the background for DBT was actually, it was designed, people were not merely just suicidal, but certain types of people, patients' mental health were quite ill, so to speak, for particularly patients who had something called borderline personality disorder. And when I was a postdoctoral fellow, chief fellow up in Boston, I trained and worked in 2 different eating disorder clinics. One was over at Tufts Children's Hospital. The other one was at Harvard Medical School's Children's Hospital. And one was using DBT, the other one wasn't. And the teenage girls who used the DBT skill set really did far better. And these girls, I mean, they're not just self-mutilating, but they were sneaking all kinds of drugs. They're trying to manipulate staff in all kinds of terrible ways, manipulating each other, backstabbing. There's all kinds of really terrible things they're doing. But when they started to use these skills and focus on building themselves up instead of trying to compete or distort or whatever, it really helps far faster, I saw. And what I saw is if we are trying to use psychotherapies for kids like that, you really need a psychotherapist who's very experienced and also understands what's going on with those patients biologically, because you can really get yourself to a mess. So what I find, the nice thing about DBT is that these are skills that patients can learn and use very quickly. And even people who are not skilled clinicians can use them quite effectively. So I just share that.
I would say the only other thing that I can't even imagine how the students feel. I'm overwhelmed by the acronyms. And I can't imagine that they have now memorized the acronyms and what those mean, especially when you're, in the situation, and maybe it's just that they keep learning it and relearning it, but that's
I think that's a very valid point that you're saying there, and I myself as a teacher get overwhelmed with these acronyms as well. And I even tell my students, I am not, like, we don't expect them to memorize it. That's not part of what the curriculum is, but to expose them, like what we were going over there in the skills, these are the types of things that you should remember, like be gentle in the way that you're talking to each other or try to validate, like those key points are the big things. And as we're talking to them, I remember going through the interpersonal skills. And so it was fresh in their minds, mind you, but the girl went home and said, I used my gift skill today. I talked to my mom and I was really gentle in how I spoke to her. It didn't get me what I wanted, but it made a difference in how we were talking to each other. So even if they're taking little bits or pieces or remembering for the accepts one, to do things for yourself, pick an activity that you like, or take some time to relax or do some breathing exercises. Just little bits can make a huge difference. And then if students need more or they're wanting more, we provide the resources on our Canvas pages that they can access. They can access at the counseling center for more in-depth kind of one-on-one, because what we're doing in the classroom is just the blanketed version to give everyone these general skills to try to get them to be able to navigate the stress in advance of it getting
Right.
too much.
So,
So
I mean, part of what I'm thinking, you know, I go to the counseling page a lot.
Yeah.
And there's really not anything like this on there,
okay,
so.
building that.
Mhm.
That we're building that. The counseling page is a work in progress.
Okay,
We've taken feedback all year. I think our Dan's here to talk about our website.
right.
That's certainly a summer project. We're starting.
Okay,
so
because
that's
I did
something
notice
we're-
like that page still hasn't been adjusted, yeah.
Yeah, we just migrated to a
Okay.
new website.
Yep.
And we're looking at like the functioning of the school right now, like that day to day, and with the number of resources we have, that really is more of a summer project, and we definitely want to build that out. I think our kids also function in a world of acronyms, right? My son texts me, Tyson, and I was like, what was that? Right, thank you so much. I just wait. So looking at these strategies, and their minds work completely differently from us. So whereas like we look at it and say, oh, that's a lot to remember. DBT is really about the mindset, right? And it's about changing how we approach different scenarios. And years ago, I remember just changing that but to and. Totally changed my framework for conversations with kids, and especially with my own children, right? You can be so upset that your teacher is not doing the same fun project that every other class that has, you know, every other teacher in this whatever world studies is doing. And your teacher just has a different approach this year, right? I'm sorry that you didn't get to build the fun thing that everybody else did. I know that that can't feel good right now. And what are you still learning? Like, you know, so I think that those, the mindset, it's really more about mindset, that flexible thinking, that respectful thinking, the respectful approach. And like MaryFaith said, we're not quizzing kids and testing them.
Yeah, it's
But I just feel like, you know, and you and I have spoken at
Yeah.
the beginning of the year about
Yeah.
the counseling page, because we talked to Meredith last year about the counseling page. I just think having those things more readily available when you're building it, not just for the students, but knowing that it's there in case they're like, okay, I can't remember what that acronym was.
Yeah.
I know I need something, or for the parents. So even though some of us are here today and we're gonna post this on our
Yep.
newsletter, you know, that's kind of our push, but you know,
We're
having
having
that-
conversations about our progressions next year, working with Meredith, working with Randy Green, because a lot of these skills also come in super handy when our juniors and seniors are
Yeah.
also going through the college application
Right.
process, right? Like multiple things can be true in those scenarios.
yeah.
You can have all of the skills and accomplishments and grades, and this school still has a 4 to 8% acceptance rate, right? Yes, you should be able, right? Although we shouldn't say should, but that's the way they can classify. So I think that this is why we do it in 9th and 10th grade, because we want them to have those skills.
And another thing to remember about like learning all of these skills is, you know, DBT is really about, you know, I'm doing the best I can and I can do better. So, you know, it's all about getting, you know, doing better. It's never about, did I do this, you know, perfectly? Did I do it? You know, did I follow the acronym perfectly? It's about, let's assess it, let's look at it, take the information and do better. Continue to do better.
Because DBT is not only in English. These acronyms are just because it's a fun way to present the material. But in many other countries, it's not that that's part of the theory or the strategy. It's just an easy way to present it in English. At the end of the day, it's whatever the kids choose that feels good for them, or it's the puppies things, or talking to people kinder, whatever it is. The goal is to role model behaviors that are healthy for you and others, so you live better.
Right, yeah.
Just had one final question. I know you talked about how this presentation is shared with the staff. I'm just wondering how in depth that gets, you know, do all teachers and staff receive some more in-depth training on how they can incorporate some of the tools and support the students with what they're learning.
So yeah, go ahead, Megan. So on March 20th, we basically have like a learning day. It's professional, all day professional development day for our teachers in the district. There are a number of sessions that are offered throughout that day, so teachers can opt in. And we're going to continue again to build our practices, like incorporate these types of strategies, whether it's in faculty meetings next year or, you know, our professional development days. So it's certainly something. It was nice when Lisa, Dana, Ryan, MaryFaith, and Dennis, Aaron, and Tim were able to present to our staff. And we definitely had teachers who were interested, because we always say teachers are the front line. Like to MaryFaith's point, like the teachers are the ones who are going to get the upset student about their grade, or they spend more time with them than any of us do, right? So they're going to see them at their highest moments and at their lowest moments. So helping them to have the skills to help prompt students to regulate is really key. And I think that's kind of the penultimate of DBT in schools, when it really becomes ingrained in the culture. And that's certainly our goal. And we're going to build that over time. It's on hand back there too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I mean, I'd also spent some time working at Kindred schools in Boston. These are schools for the kids who are the most violent or most psychotic. They have serious psychiatric problems usually. And if you can do anything to improve the milieu among the students and the staff, it makes a world of difference. And so, I mean, when you have one or a bunch of kids who are starting to improve their personal perspective and skills, I mean, these aren't just destroying the skills, it may seem like it, but there's actually a framework to this. And when they can start to build it up and then start to improve the interpersonal relationships, then bit by bit, things do start to improve over time. And you can see that when the kids are playing basketball or when they're in certain activities in the classroom. Yeah, so whether it's in an inpatient setting or say eating disorders or a regular high school or one of these other schools for kids who have serious problems, I've seen that it really does help quite a bit. So that's why I just want to mention us.
We'll take one more question.
I just had, you mentioned starting from a biological perspective of whether or not somebody is more sensitive or their ability to decompress is or the speed with which they do it, all that. Recognizing that the term gender has its own definition. Is there a difference when you are dealing with the students between those who identify as a boy and those who identify as a girl, and when they are dealing with this? So as a mother of sons, am I doing everything exactly the way you do it, or is there an adjustment, or am I looking at it just from the individual, paying no attention to whether or not they're this gender or that gender? Is that part of DBT at all? Is it addressed at all?
I would say, like from where we're coming, especially in this setting, like that biosocial theory was really looking more at our sensitivities and reactivities to emotions rather than the many things that our biology can be. So just kind of holding space for each individual person as they are, as they experience themselves, as they experience emotions is more where that's coming from. So like that level of sensitivity, reactivity, and return to baseline was that biological component we were referencing before. But I wouldn't provide certain skills to someone who identifies as, man, woman, female, as something different, I would just approach each student as they express themselves, accepting who they are, and then bringing in skills that would be, appropriate, or in a skills group, it's going through, all the modules, but it's not looking at it from that perspective.
Sometimes I look at, or as a parent or just work, look at the temperament and you look at family history, know yourself, other people in your family, how you are. A lot of times that obviously transfers, and maybe, even thinking about them when they were younger, kind of like, they change, but some things don't, that's how they were since they were 2 or 3 or 4, that's the way they're built. So knowing that, so temperament is a piece of it. But I agree, there's not like you're, again, as a girl or boy, so I'm gonna kind of tackle it this way. There might be some kind of patterns here or there that you might be able to work with, but yeah, I think it's more just know your family history, temperaments and things like that. But yeah, that really helps with that. How quickly should I expect? Maybe it does take a longer time for my kid to come down. And I really need to be aware of that because I might be unintentionally, trying to help too soon or whatever, or maybe I need to adjust my expectations.
Thank you all so much for coming out.
Thank you.
To us today.
Thank you.
I'm moving off the super. I can just leave them here and I can come back later.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So everybody, this will all be presented on our website. It's available to see after. We'll have both the video of today's presentation as well as the slides shared as well. We're going to move right over to our next guest who came today. We have Dan Divito from IT. He's our Director of Digital Learning and Technology at Weston Public Schools. He's going to give us a little info about our new website and talk about some upcoming programming about families in the digital age. Yeah, thank you.
How you doing? Nice to meet everyone. So I just want to let you know that on Monday, we went live with our brand new website. The website, we took years of feedback from the public, from students, from staff, to try to streamline our website, make it easier to navigate, quicker to get to the most important things that you need to get to as a parent. And so we went live with it, and that's not the end of it. I just wanted to say, we're always available for more feedback, trying to streamline things as best as we possibly can. So to really just put out there that if anybody has any more feedback, questions or concerns, to email me directly, reach out to me. And we're always looking to improve the website and improve the way we communicate with the public. I know, like Megan and I have already talked about things that plans that she has for the website. So we're constantly trying to evolve. But I know it is light years better than our previous website, which was a big pain to deal with, a big pain to navigate through. And I apologize to everybody with how difficult it was, but hopefully we're making strides to correct that.
Dan, remind me of your email, please, so I can put it on the.
Sure. So it's DANIEL DIVITO@westonps.org. I know everyone tends to spell my name like the movie star. That is not my last name. So any feedback, doesn't have to be now, but feel free to reach out to me.
And I can attest that Dan is very responsive to Chrisana. Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you in person.
Yeah. So like yesterday, you put the link back up to
Yes.
the town of Weston. Social
Youth services, yeah,
and
absolutely.
so, yeah.
So, and piggybacking off of that, March 30th at 7 p.m., I'm going to be hosting a webinar with SROs Jason Kim and Joe McGowan called Families in the Digital Age. The link will be coming out soon. And the point of the webinar is to really go over with families all the new technology that's out there in the world that we as parents may not be aware of, that our kids definitely are aware of. And how do we navigate the online world where there's a lot of things that are happening now to kids, like phishing schemes are happening to students, not just adults. So how can we be proactive as parents? How can we help our students, our kids, what we're doing as a district to help prepare the students, and upcoming things that you may not be aware of, like ChatGPT, right? That's a big thing. That's a big conversation that's happening in education circles right now. But as a parent, what should you be aware of? So really just to try to help parents navigate this new digital world we live in.
Are the kids, because I know at my company, we do a lot of training on scams, I'll call it, you know,
Mhm.
phishing is one of them. What are we doing with the students related to that? So, you know, that email that went out.
Yeah,
That my son was all excited to try to get a part-time job.
yeah.
So, you know, I knew, for example, to notice that the person representing the company was using their Gmail and not a.
Right.
And not using a company email. Just one small example.
Yep.
So, you know, what are the students being taught so that they can start seeing some of those, like,
Yeah.
this feels not right.
So that's part of the digital citizenship curriculum, but also the SROs. They have presentations for the students. So what we're going to be presenting on the 30th is kind of a hybrid of what the SROs are showing the students, things that they can identify. And it's getting, and phishing specifically is getting more and more savvy, right? Phishing used to be, you're being contacted by a prince and who needs to give you $1 million to hold on to, right? That was a thing. Now, you used to be able to identify a phishing scam by horrible misspellings, proper misuse of the English language. Those are gone. You know, there are ones that come out that say your Netflix account has been compromised and it looks perfect. So how do you identify? Or they take advantage of the fact that most of the time, 99% of the time, we're checking our email on our phones. So you're not going to see the email address. So you'll just see, like, one of the biggest ones that's been happening in school districts for the past couple of years. Someone will create a Gmail account and they'll call it WHS Principal 5892 at gmail.com. But then they'll put the name as Megan Ward, right? And then we'll get an email on a Saturday that'll say, are you busy? And then if you respond, they try to get you to go buy Apple gift cards and then scratch off the gift cards and give it to people. And they prey on the fact that when you're checking it on your phone, you're just seeing Megan Ward. You're not seeing that it's coming from a Gmail account, not from a district email account. So things that students can check are quick things like that, like look at the email address. Don't ever send sensitive information. No company will ever send sensitive information. And I'm even going to be discussing at the meeting, taking it a step further, which I think, unfortunately, this is the day and age. We've all set up what's called two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. It's a huge technical term, but what that means is, have you ever tried to sign on to your bank and it texts you a code and it says, input the code? That's multi-factor authentication. That's a second layer of security to log into a banking website, for instance, but that's being recommended for almost everything nowadays. Any kind of site, even social media sites, they're recommending that. I'm not saying we necessarily have to force our students to do that, but it's something that we want to start having that conversation, because students, the last thing you want is their identities to get stolen at 16 years old, and now they're dealing with something like that for the rest of their life. So as a parent, it's very easy for us to just kind of like, no harm, no foul, I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to pay attention to it, but we need to be diligent to protect ourselves, but our families with this. So we're constantly adding to what the SROs are presenting, our digital citizenship curriculum, which spans from kindergarten all the way up through high school, but we're always looking to add because there's always new things that are coming out, like ChatGPT is the latest thing. So now it's conversations of, you know, academic honesty are now getting woven into it on a deeper level. So these are the types of things that we're going to be looking to discuss on March 30th. And the goal is for this to not be a one and done thing, but we want to make this a series over the next couple of years. So as your children get older, then what's the newest and latest threat, unfortunately? And how can we use social media in a positive experience, and having students understand that social media follows them forever. And even if it's a product like Snapchat where things get deleted, they really don't get deleted. And colleges are using it for applications, and they're using it for acceptance, and companies are doing checks on people's social media accounts. and saying, forget it. And I've done it, and it's an easy way to look into somebody, right? Because an interview, you're putting on the best version of yourself. You're not putting on who you really are. This is what companies are doing. Colleges are doing that as well. So helping your children understand that. I mean, I'm already, my son is 11, my daughter is 8. I'm already starting on my son. He's in 6th grade. So now he's starting to open up more into this online world that I'm telling him, you have to be aware of the things you say. And even when it's gaming online, they will take screenshots of that and they will post that on social media. And that can be used against them because a lot of times kids who game online, they end up getting really angry when they lose an online match. Yeah, right? Yeah, no, we haven't replaced any controllers in the house that have gotten smashed, not at all. But that stuff will carry over with that. So now it's how do you control your emotions? So it's something is like gaming can actually affect them negatively in their future. How do we talk to
That
them
ship
about
has sailed in my house, I'm sorry.
So,
Will it be recorded?
yes, it's gonna be a Zoom webinar.
Okay.
So I'll record it and I'll post it on our district YouTube channel. And then feedback. And if there's anything that you think you would like for me to go over, email me again. And even after the meeting, if there's something you want me to go over in the future, email me, because I would like to, even if it's not necessarily a webinar every 6 months, but even if it's just a quick newsletter or something I can do to help everybody, please let me know.
I think if you could include this, the scamming topic.
Yeah,
That would be great. I mean, luckily I had the opportunity to use it as a teaching moment of, okay, these are the things that looked funny to me.
Yeah.
Right? The Gmail thing, I looked them up
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. No picture.
Right.
1 follower.
Right.
You know, so I could use those examples to just, I look everybody up on LinkedIn, you know, so.
Yep.
You know, that's another way.
Yeah.
To do it.
100%. And there's research you do. You never reply to the email. You want to start a new email with the email address they give you because they embed fake emails behind the email that they put in the email. So you always want to start a
It's
new
really gotten
email.
crazy.
You know, and there's one that savvy that, I mean, it happened to a family member. I almost believed it. It was like a PayPal. You know, people can request money through PayPal or Venmo, and they requested like $500. And then in the note, it said your PayPal account has been hacked. Please call this number. And it looks like an official number from PayPal, but it's a comment. Like if you ever paid somebody online, you can say what you're paying them for. And students are using, you know, payment methods as they get older. That's how they're paying their friends for things. So how do they not fall for that? And then, because what happens is you click on that, you call that number, they want to take over your computer and click accept on the $500 request that they're asking you for. And we were really close to almost calling the number. I'm like, wait a minute, that's in the comment section. So I'm not the expert, and I'm a nerd for a living, and I almost fell for this. So how can we all be more vigilant with that? So we will have the discussions like looking up a suspicious email, right? Can you do a little bit of research going on LinkedIn or, you know, manually typing in the email address? So anything that anybody has that you'd like me to add as a topic, please let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
That's
problem.
great.
Thank you.
Not necessarily relevant specifically to this, but do you see those videos on YouTube? There are people who professionally hack the hackers and.
Oh, yeah.
They're really something, and
Oh,
they pretend to be a victim who's gotten their computer hacked, but they've actually pre-hacked the hacker's office overseas, and they're kind of entertaining, but kind of alarming how vicious these teams of people could be.
Oh, yeah,
So-
absolutely. And it's true. And that's, you know, counter hacking is becoming a thing. And then there's a whole concept of ethical hacking
Mhm.
that I'm actually going to bring up
Oh, wow.
at the meeting, that this space is huge from a career perspective.
Mhm.
And even if, you know, there's a kid who is attempting to hack, how do you bring them to the right side? How do you draw them away from the dark side, right?
How do you use it?
How do you use it? And it's called ethical hacking, and it's a thing, and it's unfortunately a booming business.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
out
everybody.
today.
Thank you.
Thanks for the new website too.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dan got, you inherited the old one.
They switched over to it
The
like
summer. before
3
you got
weeks
here.
before I
I
started.
remember.
And I started, I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? And
Yeah.
So it was a nightmare from day one. So it took a little while, but eventually everyone got their wits end with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
So we're gonna ask everybody to please hang in for at least the next 15 minutes. We do have a couple of things to vote on, so we want to make sure we have enough members of the PTO here to do that. Megan, do you have time or?
Can I give a quick update?
Yes, yes.
And then I have to scoot. Sorry, I've
Awesome.
been in and out this morning. I know what's going on. March is a busy month. It's a long month and it's a busy month. We have a number of days. So March 20th is our full day professional development day. Students do not come to school. It's a teacher development day. We also have our seniors presenting on their portrait of the graduate work on March 15th, 16th, and 17th. So the high school schedule this year for those days is mimicking the elementary conference schedule. So the elementary schools have a late start on Wednesday, the 15th. So do we. We're going to do a quick calibration with our teachers on how to rate our students' portrait of the graduate portfolios. We have community members who are also coming in. I think some of you might be participating. And we're really excited. It's just an opportunity for our seniors to showcase what they've done for 4 years and how they've kind of evolved and changed and have some bragging moments and all that they've done here. On the 16th and 17th, we have early dismissals. Same thing is happening in the afternoons. The panels are meeting, students are coming in and presenting. So shortened days on the 15th, 16th, and 17th.
So the 15th is a late start and the 16th
Yeah.
and 17th.
We
are
did
early
it that way
dismissals.
because we felt like for families, for everyone to be on the same schedule to have, like to maintain that conference schedule, we felt like that was just easier for everybody.
But Megan, the middle school is not.
The middle school
Yeah,
is in
they're-
session.
There is
I know.
a really tough conversation in my house. Didn't make that easy for me. Oh, just fine.
I would say someday you will be there
Yes.
and be grateful for that time.
I understand.
Yes, that happened to me over vacation when I worked, but I didn't, I was on vacation and my kids weren't. It's so unfair. What are you still doing here this morning? Like, sometimes moms deserve that. What else is going on?
SAT.
And SAT day, thank you. I need those memory prompts sometimes. Wednesday, SAT day. Seniors do not come in. Wednesday, the 22nd. So the 20th, kids don't have school. 21st is a regular day. 22nd, that Wednesday. Seniors do not come in at all. We're giving them that time to plan their internship, make those phone calls and make a plan for that month of May and into June for their internships. Juniors come in, they take the school day SAT, which is the Connecticut State High School Assessment. So juniors have to take that.
Is it the whole day or?
It is half a day. So they come in at regular time. I believe our dismissal is either 11:45 or 11:55. I'm sending out a letter with all of this information. I just put some hints in the week ahead.
Yeah.
I've been alluding to it, but we needed to get some things straightened out this week. Just in terms of scheduling. 9th and 10th graders are going to come in. We have alternative programming for them because we need so many rooms for testing of our juniors that we really can't function. And we have so many mixed grade classes that we really can't test 11th grade and have 9th and 10th resume their day as usual. So for 9th graders, we have Generation SOS coming in, which is substance use prevention, kind of it's a younger person telling their story, how they kind of got into it and got out of it, which we're excited for that organization. I think sometimes the younger folks can relate better to our younger students. And for 10th grade, they are going to do a mock admissions panel with our counselors, which is tradition. So that has been going on for years here. Our official programming is going to start with for 9th and 10th graders, the kindness and generosity of our PTO for 9th and 10th graders. Your treat is going to start at 9:30. Sophomores, that will happen in the cafeteria. 9th graders, it's going to happen in the lobby because the 9th grade presentation is going to be in the auditorium and the 10th grade presentation is going to be in the gym. So we're kind of keeping everyone separate to also maintain the quiet towards the back of the building for testing. 9th and 10th graders will have the option to come in on the bus that morning. We'll have a movie showing in the auditorium, the library will be open, the writing center, the math lab, the cafeteria. So we'll have moments for them to come and use the time in the school. Many of our teachers will be proctoring, but they'll have that space to come in. Students who opt to not use that time can also come in at 9:30.
I'm a little confused. Sorry.
If you have transportation as a 9th and 10th grader to
Okay.
come in at 9:30, you can do that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If you don't, working families, I'm one of them, you need to take the bus. We have some relaxing opportunities for you. We have some quiet time library. These rooms will be open,
So something for them to do before 9:30.
something for them to do. So
I
they
get
can
that.
come in on the bus or they can come in at 9:30 for our 9th and 10th graders, up to them.
And the
Hey,
11th
Megan, will Laura send out a schedule for the SPED guys, the transition class?
Community classes for those days will have the 15th, 16th, 17th, Laura will send something out. They will be here all day.
Okay, thank you.
The 22nd, I have to double check with Laura. She will communicate with the students in the community program.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead,
the start time for 11th graders for the essays,
7:30, bus.
like
Bus
normal time.
Normal time. I shouldn't say 7:30, it's 7:45.
7:45, yeah. Usually, after how long they get the result? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question.
I have no
I don't
idea.
know. I would have to ask Meredith that.
It's a few
I want to
weeks.
say like 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, I
Typically.
remember, I was driving down for like Easter weekend and Sean called me about it. So it's like middle of April.
Depends on when Easter is or
Oh,
was.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
No, but I'm saying it was the
Yeah,
middle,
yeah.
it was the middle of
Because I
April.
think the
It's
next
Saturday.
SAT is May, so I mean, if they wanna
4 to
retake
6
it.
weeks usually.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember last year, it was during spring break. That they
Right,
got,
that's what I'm
got
saying,
it.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember.
Okay, so
where it was,
mid-April,
yeah.
6 weeks.
And you'll have that score before
The next
one.
opportunity.
So you get to
Right.
decide,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, cool, thank
The only
you.
issue you'll have is, if you want to make that decision, you might not get your preferred location if you decide to do it again in May or June.
Okay,
Some of the dates fill up really fast, like
Oh.
August.
okay,
So,
okay.
yeah, it's easier almost to sign up and then cancel
Oh.
and
I
get a
see.
refund.
You can.
That's
Okay.
why they all fill up.
Right, right.
All right.
Any other, I don't know if there are any other questions for me so far, but those are the big things in terms of schedules. I'm gonna
Busy month.
communicate those, not just in the week ahead, but in separate letters, that are gonna come out. We're also doing, certain groups of students are being surveyed, whether it's through the Connecticut Department of Health. Parents whose students may be being surveyed are going to get a letter from me today, just certain, English classes. It's all prescribed by, we send them out our not student names, but teacher lists, and they tell us which classes they're gonna survey. It's all part of the Connecticut Department of Health survey through the Centers for Disease Control and the state. And also there's a tobacco survey we'll be doing before the end of the year. It does not survey all students. It surveys a select.
What is it
groups.
surveying?
It's about their use. And,
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
the survey, if a student is being surveyed,
Mhm.
those parents will be informed. They will have access to the survey so they can see the questions that are being asked, and they will also have an opt-out opportunity.
Got it.
It does not apply to the majority of students, but I just wanted to put that out there in case parents are saying, oh, I got this letter about the survey, and another family says, oh, we didn't get that letter.
Right,
Not all families will get those communications, and it's intentional.
good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
You too.
So we're going,
Can we keep the agenda to the bird?
we're gonna run through it, and give the very critical bits that need voting, and we'll move quickly through everything. The next item up on our agenda is, we have Kristana here from, she's also chairing the nominations committee this year, and she'd like to present the committee members.
Yes, I would. I am thrilled to have a great nominating committee that I'd like to present to you today. And then I will call for a motion to vote to approve the committee. There's 6 people. First, I'm the chair of the nominating committee, as Christine said. I have the following members are Ann Biggin, Rebecca Solano, Ann Day, Lauren Carter, and Jennifer Bernheim is kind of our alternate. So she is going to participate as she can. So I want to see if anyone has any questions about any of the members before I call for a motion. Oh, okay, then I'd like to call for a motion to approve the 23 to 24 nominating committee. Mona, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Liv. Second. All that approve?
Give me a second, because I created it last night for the people online, so they could participate as well. So let me just, I believe it's the last one. Let me just launch it. Okay.
Some 100%.
I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and we will be hard at work to get a great board for next year. Yeah.
Thank you. So next up, as Kiati Patel was not able to join us this morning for the unapproved minutes from the February 23rd meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? I did forward them, and they're here in hard copy, old school, and would like to approve those minutes. I know folks at home had the opportunity to email back County with any amendments that have been made. So could I ask for a motion to approve the minutes? First, we have Mona and a second. Sure. All those in favor? All those opposed? Looks like unanimously in favor. Thank you for that. Next up, we have Mona on the agenda to present our financials.
Thank you. For the month of January, for our operating account, we received payments of 7 cents for interest. And we made payments for hospitality of $74 for the coffee and conversation. Made a payment for directory and printing of our the membership books of $1,341. And we made payments for staff appreciation for the dessert bar of $479.50. Leaving us with a balance of $6,249.61. Moving on to philanthropy, for the month of January, we received interest of $1.07. And we received payments for the midterm survival kits, as well as made reimbursements related to that. And we netted receipts of $394.22. Furthermore, we made payments for our philanthropy request for the smart TV carton sound bar of $1,910. And we also made payments for General Spirit expenses for hot chocolate for $283. Class of 24 Spirit of $252. And class of 25 holiday cookie decoration of $346. That left us with a balance of $58,422, of which $20,446 has been allocated, leaving us with a balance of $37,976 remaining for allocation. Any questions on the financials? So With that, can I get a motion to approve the January financials? Christine, thank you. May I get a second? Olivia, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed?
So who was the second?
Lydia,
Thank you. Sorry, I was looking down, just having time.
Everybody approved.
All to the one.
thank you.
Thanks, Mona.
Of course.
Okay, so thank you for that, Mona. Thank you. We're gonna continue to move through. Just want to touch base with Lydia to see if she has any updates for us regarding the.
Newsletter is going out tonight. Since we want to wait it for we had the break and we wanted to wait for the meeting. So if you have last minute submission, please send them to me, but try to do it within the next few hours. Then we are closing it.
Thank you, thank you. Next on our agenda, we had Andrew Chi, who was not able to stay for the rest of the meeting. So what we're going to do is, we'll be, as usual, sharing his BOE report highlights to our website, and we'll be sharing the link to that in our newsletter, which will go out later this evening. Moving on from there, we have our sped liaison JC, and I know you're online, so thank you for coming.
Hey, so the big thing that we have coming up is next Thursday, we have a webinar as everyone seems to be in the middle of IEPs and PPTs and triennials. We have a webinar where we're going to, the group is going to basically share with parents the top tips to have a productive PPT or IEP meeting. And so we kind of been going through it last night, and we've got an agenda and stuff to go through, and just kind of share our experience with parents who might not be as well versed in preparing for their IEP meeting, and things that we've picked up over the course of the different things that we've been doing to help them. So that's next Thursday evening. Liv, you should already have that from last time, but I'll just resend it to you to put into the newsletter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, JC.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Also, we're going to pop into the agenda. Nancy Hayden, Nancy Kerwan, one of our chair people from the 5K, had to just head out. We're running a bit late, but she just asked me to please remind everybody that our annual Memorial Day 5K team is still looking for volunteers to join. So please double check on our newsletter tonight. We'll have emails to connect with the 5K team if you'd like to volunteer, and we'd love to get volunteer. It's a great event. It's a lot of fun, whether you're working ahead of time or working the race that day or running it. But it's a great, fun, really special day and a great part of our community traditions. So we welcome everybody to please join in, give a hand making this 5K all it can be. Following that, we have some updates from our parent reps. Actually, I don't know that we have all of our reps online, so I'm just going to pop into my notes and maybe Joanne could update for the sophomores. I'll turn the camera to you.
Do you want me to just start? Okay. Hi, everybody. So the sophomores, we have been busy at work, building a couple of smaller scale fundraisers with two prongs, one for community building and one to fundraising a little bit for our class of 2025, which are the current sophomores. So you will see come through shortly in the coming days and weeks, two master classes that we're putting together, makeup and hair, and the other one is building a bouquet. So just some fun activities to kind of get people together. One is in March and one is in May, and information will be coming and through shortly. We're also going to be working alongside the freshmen, and I'll let Anne add more. As Megan said, to provide some breakfast snacks on the SAT prep, on the SAT test day for grade 9 and. That's it for now. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna jump to the juniors, the class of 2024. I have some stuff that was already covered, but just as a reminder for the juniors, the SAT will be administered here at school on March 22nd. There's a special schedule, and we heard that our principal, Megan Ward, will be updating us with a bit more shortly, and she shared quite a bit today already. A reminder, if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and schedule your post-secondary planning meetings with your juniors counselor and or Randy Green during a free period. Reminder to everyone, students should complete their game plan survey before their college planning meeting. For full details on that, check your inbox and search for an email from Randy Green. I know I've heard a lot of juniors have been having these meetings, and it's a really exciting time. I hope everybody gets the opportunity to get that on the schedule, because it's a by and large very positive experience, and our juniors are getting really excited about what's ahead for them. Class of 2023, our seniors. Not sure if we covered it this last meeting, but the seniors had a Valentine's candy bar. They're hoping to do a special for the seniors each month. The class of 2023 reps will be meeting with the senior class advisors early this month, and they're going to go over the junior and senior prom details, and they'll be starting to plan ticket sales. I don't know that we have Anne online right now from the class of 2026.
I'm here.
Oh, you are there. I didn't see the icon. Awesome. We'd be delighted if you could present.
Sure. Just like Jawaz said, we're going to be working with the sophomore reps to put something together for the SAT day. So Jawad, we should get together soon to talk about that. And we're going to run the request for dads to add to the chat group one more week in the newsletter. We've got a couple requests that have come in, and then I think they're going to take it on their own and schedule something for dads again. That's about it for now.
Thank you, Anne. We also have our student government representative, the liaison to the PTO. Jaya Sharma was having chemistry exam today, so she wasn't able to join the meeting. But she was kind enough to share an update about what's been going on in student government, which I'll share with you now. In our last meeting, we planned out activities and games to play during the pep rally. We ended up having the top 4 classes that won the Super Bowl competition compete against each other in an obstacle course. As for the Super Bowl, it was pretty successful, and the winning class accumulated about 70 non-perishables to donate to the Parsons Parson Foundation in Norwalk. For the individual grade groups, we're all working on our community service initiative, which involves reaching out to a charity or foundation and seeing where we would be able to help out. She says, I know that specifically the sophomores are looking to work with the Star Foundation to help with their annual big events. Also, each grade group has been assigned a holiday or theme, which they are supposed to decorate the lobby. So the grade groups that have not already decorated the lobby are buying decorations and planning for that as well. I believe the freshmen are the next group to decorate, and I think that they're decorating for Earth Day. And that's pretty much everything that they covered at their last meeting. So many thanks to Jaya for keeping us in the loop with what's going on at the student government. And I believe we have covered everything unless Jawad has any updates for us.
So we have our next speaker lined up for our next meeting. Just heads up that we will have the next meeting, this is March meeting. We're not having it in April, we're having it on March 31st, but it does cover the April meeting.
And we're gonna have Dr. Andrew Chi, who is a member of the our liaison, PTO liaison, in PTO and BOE. He's a psychiatrist, a coach, and he's also a Weston High School parent. And he will be talking about the neurology and psychology of the different states of consciousness, meditation and flow state. So this would be a pretty interesting conversation, and we're happy to have a parent want to share their knowledge with the rest of the community. And that's it for me.
Thank you for that. Definitely looking forward to the next meeting, and that will be, as Joelle said, March 31st. So please join us in person or on Zoom, whichever works best for you. Thank you, everybody who attended today. Thank you again to our guest speakers who came out. It's a really interesting topic, and we of course appreciate everybody's time. Thanks very much, and this will bring our March 3rd meeting to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Recording.